Hi friends, hi, how's it going? I hope that today finds you well. Today we are doing the next video in my palette roulette series in which I review a palette that is part of my collection, maybe also part of your collection. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I am your go-to gal that's going to tell you you can do what you want, wear what you want, be who you want to be. You do you, boo. I am your best partner in crime for all things colorful, high-end beauty and self-care. I am also a woman of a certain age that is always told you can't wear that. You're not supposed to be wearing those things. You shouldn't be wearing color. You shouldn't have crazy color hair. You're too old. You're too old for that. I'm here to tell you no. No, you're not. And I think that you'll find that I'm pretty fun to hang out with. So I hope that you do find that. I hope that I sound like your cup of tea. And I hope that you'll want to subscribe before you leave today. For those of you not new here, thank you guys so much for coming back every single time. You know I appreciate you all so very much for being here, and I hope that a palette review sounds like something that you're interested in, so let's just jump into it. Today's palette that we're reviewing is the Dominique Cosmetics Berries Cream palette, and I will link my Rustic Glam palette roulette up in the cards for you at some point in this video, because I actually have 3 Dominique Cosmetics palettes in my collection, and that was the first one I used, and I was a little bit timid to go after this one because I just didn't have an awesome time with Rustic Glam. I think it was maybe the color story of Rustic Glam. We all know that that's not typically my color story. It isn't a palette that I purchased. I think I got it in an Ipsy, if I remember correctly. So it is a palette that came to me via one of my subscription boxes, and it's just not a palette that I would have picked up, ever. This one I did pick up. This one I picked up actually before the Rustic Glam was placed into my collection by Ipsy. So this is the Dominique Cosmetics Berries Cream palette, and it does come in this nice sleeve here that is this beautiful, like, rosy, like, shimmery pink packaging that says just Dominique Cosmetics on the front, and on the back it does have all the shades that are in the palette. It gives you some information about the ingredients. It tells you that it is cruelty free. It's got a 12-month shelf life. I don't really get into the shelf life of powders, if I'm honest. A powder is a powder is a powder, and it's gonna last you forever. Don't take my word for it. Like, I don't throw away my palettes after 12 months. I just...
Man, that would be a lot of damn money down the drain. I have way too many palettes. Way too many to do that.
The palette, once you get it out of the sleeve, this is what it looks like. It kind of reminds me of like velour or velvet, but it is plastic, or not plastic, cardboard packaging. Berries Cream is raised, and I did watch a video not that long ago from a blind makeup artist that said that she loves these kind of packages because you can feel of the letters. It's very tactile, so she knows what palette she's grabbing at as long as there are like raised lettering on it. So I always think these days that, you know, after having seen that, that is really cool for a brand to do, just to give their palette a little bit more edge in all different avenues of a makeup collection. It's very inclusive in my thought process. So when you open this palette up, it does look like this. You have a nice size mirror in here, and then these are the shades in the palette. And at first glance, this palette is very purple, and I think that that is why I put it into my collection myself, why I purchased it myself, is because these are tones that I feel like are right up my alley. Like purples, pinks, oranges, those reds, those are the tones that I like on my eyes. This was definitely a palette that belonged to my collection when I purchased it. So this palette does come in at 5 stars on Dominique Cosmetics. You all know how I feel about 5-star reviews on the own brand's website. I just feel like they're just a smidge bit skewed. This does have 110 reviews on the Dominique Cosmetics website. Only 3 of them are less than 5 stars. So I'm not saying there's something fishy there, but I don't necessarily 100% trust that star rating. I always go to Google or someplace else to find a star rating that might be a little more real. So with that said, Beauty Bay did have this for a 4.7 star rating, but it only had 29 reviews on it, and Sephora has it at 4.6 stars with 138 reviews. Now, this used to be sold at Sephora, but when I popped into Sephora to see what some of those reviews read, there was no reviews. As a matter of fact, it said it couldn't find the palette anymore. I know I picked this up at Sephora, so I do know that it was sold at Sephora at one point in time, but it is apparently not anymore. So as far as picking it up, I do think that you can only get it at Beauty Bay, maybe Beautylish, and Dominique Cosmetics right now. So I would say that this probably ranks right in that 4.5, 4.6 star place for me. I really did have a great time with this, except for the one shade that happens to be on my eyes today. This Dominique Cosmetics Berries and Cream can be purchased for $44, and it does have 0.63 ounces of product in it. That is 0.0525 ounces of product per pan, which means that they are approximately the same amount of product in them as a mini or midi size Natasha Denona pan or a ColourPop eyeshadow pan. But these pans are huge. So this is the Pure Cosmetics 4-in-1 Love Your Selfie Foundation, and you guys can see the shadow is about the same size as this is around, only it's 8-sided, so an octagon shape, like a stop sign. With that said, I do believe that Dominique Cosmetics, when she first started putting out eyeshadows, part of her intent with these eyeshadow palettes and them being such big pans is that you could use these products, these shades, anywhere on your face. I will tell you, I used this as a blush at one point in time. I also used this as a bronzer at one point in time in my day. I think I chose the wrong color to use as a bronzer because it was really deep on my skin. I looked like I had a dirty face all day long. This is a blush, actually made a really pretty beautiful blush for my eye look for that day. I didn't use any of them as a highlight. I could have though. This is a really beautiful like pink toned matte shadow that would have been a beautiful matte highlight on my cheekbones if I had decided to go that route. I did instead use that almost every single day as my inner corner and my brow bone shade. Today I am not wearing it as that, but it is in my eye look today. This palette does have 12 shades. Like I said, 9 of them are matte, 3 of them are shimmered. One of those shimmers is a foil, like a really metallic foiled shadow, and then one of the mattes is a matte with glitter in it, and she boasts it as a creamier matte. I don't feel like it had any creamier a formula than the other mattes in it did, and I thought that that was notable. This launched in 2018 in November-ish, right before the holiday season. I remember it coming out about the same time as the Naked Cherry, or maybe it was just that it was focused as a dupe to the Naked Cherry. I think that it's honestly a better color story than the Naked Cherry. The Naked Cherry is very one-noted, and this one I feel like could present itself in many different eye looks. It does claim to be effortless, sultry, and dramatic. I did find that to be true. I mean, obviously this is a very dramatic eye, but some of the pictures that you're going to see were very simple eye looks and very simply easy to do. This is not at all the pinky purple palette that it appears at first glance. There are quite a few shades in here that make it very, very sultry, as well as very, very bold and brazen if you want it to be. I loved these 2 shades here for transitions. This one is a transition that I used quite often in the looks that I did all throughout the week, but this one is the transition in my eye look today, and it's actually boasted as a gray, but I feel like it's a very purple or lavender toned gray, almost like a grayish kind of tone. It also can appear very purple in an eye look depending on what colors you are using with it. Today it is my transition shade, and I feel like it looks gray in my eye look today, but I also feel like on the outskirts of this shadow, and there is no other color in this shadow besides that gray, the blue, and the black, and then of course the white on the lid portion. but it looks very pinky on the outskirts of the eye look, and I'm like, where did that pink come from? It was very, very strange to me. I also use this one pretty much every single day as well, like I said, in my brow bone in my inner corner, because it is a beautiful brightening shade. I really feel like if you only wanted one eyeshadow palette in your collection, period, this could be it, dependent on your skin tone. While I do think that it is very inclusive in the skin tones that it could feasibly show up on, I do think that there's probably skin tones on the far end of both the pale and the deep side of the spectrum that wouldn't be able to wear this palette in particular. It goes great for an everyday eye look, but it also can be doctored up and become very sultry, very deep, very dark, very glam. Wear time on it is around that 7-hour mark, which I don't think is necessarily awful. I think I've said before in multiple videos, I do wear my makeup for an extended period of time. Typically it's around 10 to 12 hours. So I really do need eyeshadow to be able to live on my eyes from about 6 o'clock in the morning to about 11 o'clock at night, most nights, without looking like a hot mess. While I will say that this did have a good wear time of like 7 hours, it didn't really look like a hot mess. It just started fading a lot. It didn't crease at all, which I'm very grateful for. It worked best with a primer. I would say even a tacky primer would be the best kind of primer to use with it. It gives the colors a little bit of something to stick to. While I don't think that they need necessarily something to stick to because they don't blend away to like nothing, but it isn't the most pigmented right off the bat. It is a palette that you're going to have to build up, and with that said, that makes it very newbie friendly. I think it's very beginner friendly because you can't really go all in and destroy your eye look from the get. Like the blue in this eye look had to be built up quite a bit to get the opacity that it has. The black in this palette is very much a gray unless you build it up to the opacity that you want it to be. I do think that if it were wet, it could be black right off the bat, but I also know that many of the shadows in here do have to be built up in order to get the opacity that you want it to be. I know that the gray in my eye look today has probably about 3 layers on it to begin with, and then I had to put another layer on top just to bring that shade back to life in my eye look, and that's totally fine. I'm okay with that as long as it doesn't get patchy. It doesn't get patchy. That, I will say, this palette won my heart over for Dominique Cosmetics because I struggled so bad with the Rustic Glam palette getting patchy. Like I said at the beginning, the blue one is not my favorite. I just think Kristen Dominique needs to maybe steer clear of blues. I don't think that she has the best blue formula. I did struggle with this blue in this palette as much as I struggle with the blues in the Rustic Glam palette. The Rustic Glam palette I think has prettier shimmers than this one does, but I did appreciate the shimmers in this palette as well. They definitely need to be wet in order to go onto your eye look and get the kind of like staying power but also opacity that you want from them, and they sometimes don't look anything like they do in this palette. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the shadows. I'm going to go across the first row, or the top, so these ones and then these ones here. This is 5 of the first row of shadows. The first one we have here is this one is called Warm Pie, and it is the creamy matte red brown with the gold glitter in it. It is creamy, but I don't think it's any more creamy than any of the other mattes in this palette. It doesn't feel any different to the touch, and it doesn't really apply any different. What I would say though is there's no reason really for the gold flecks in here. We all know how I feel about a matte with glitter in it. I feel the same way about this matte with glitter in it. As soon as you start buffing this into an, if you're patting it into an eye look, perfect. If you're buffing it in or blending it at all, those gold flecks just go away. One thing that I do like about this matte with glitter in it is that the glitter in this matte doesn't impact negatively blending this shadow, whereas it always has and always does with many other of these kind of formulations from other brands that I've experienced, which is why I don't like glitter in mattes. It didn't impact the the blendability of this shadow at all. And this is a really beautiful shade on an eye look, especially with the brown in the palette. I think it's beautiful. And I did have an eye look with this all over the lid and brown in the crease and the outer V. Oh my god, it was such a beautiful eye look, and I cannot remember if I got a picture of it or not. I do hope I did, but if not, I'm super sorry. That was probably one of my favorite eye looks out of the palette. The second shade is this one, which is the chocolate mousse shade. It is the matte, rich, deep dark brown shade. And I mean, just look at how beautiful those look next to each other. They truly are beauty on an eye look. The next one is that one. That is Sweet Cream. That is the matte pale pink. This one is one that I used, like I said, in my brow bone and my inner corner almost every single day. Then we have this one, which is the gray, and pinky swatches are never good, so I'm going to go in again and swatch that one more time. That is called Toasted. It is a matte gray, which I think that you can probably see it in here. It does like lean a little bit pinky on the outskirts of that shadow, but also that shadow looks more lavender than it does gray, in my opinion. Tell me what you think. And then this one, which is a matte fuchsia, and it is called Bittersweet. And the final one in that row is that one there, and it is called Soft and Sweet. It is just a matte taupe, kind of like with a pinky shift, I would say, almost mauve-y. Second row, 5 of the 6 shades in the second row. The first one is the gold foil. They're on top, and it is called Honey Dipped. Perfect name for this. It is gold foiled metallic. The second one is the pale pink shimmer, and it is called Sugar Cookie. The third one is called Cranberry, and it is a maroon shimmer that leans very pink or purple depending on what colors you're putting with it. Then we have Blueberry, which is the blue that is in my eye look today. I'm sorry, Blueberry Muffin. That is the blue in my eye look today. Then we have Cherry Juice, which is a very matte, deep, like plummy cranberry color. Then we have the black, which is called Blackberry, and I'm going to put it over here next to this guy. But I think that you can see it is black, but it is also very deep dark gray versus black. It does have to be built up to get it to the blackest black that you might want in an eye look, but because of that, I think that it is a very appropriate black for a beginner. Those are the shades in the palette. I do think that this palette has quite a bit of fallout, and I think a lot of that also shows up in the pans when you're using them. There is quite a bit of, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's quite a bit of dustiness in the pans when you're using them. So definitely you will want to do your eyes first when you're messing with this palette. I have to say, this palette helped me love Dominique Cosmetics brand from an eyeshadow perspective, because after Rustic Glam, I wasn't touching her eyeshadows again, but knew that I had 2 more palettes in my collection and was like, oh man, what if I purchased them for absolutely no reason? This one always called to my heart though, because of the sheer color story. But I think that you can also see that even though it looks very pink and purple at first glance, it's just not. The blue, super hard to work with, but the rest of the shadows in this palette actually blended quite well. After dealing with Natasha Denona for the last couple weeks, whom I love, her shadows are very, very pigmented and very opaque right from the get-go, right? So there's not a whole lot of room for error. Although if you watch her do makeup, like, she's very messy with her makeup application, and yet it comes out and just turns into this masterpiece on a person's eye. I'm not somebody who can put a masterpiece on a person's eye. It takes me, like, something like this would take me like an hour and a half to do. So on my own eye, let alone what it would take to do on somebody else's eye. She just throws stuff on an eyeball and all of a sudden it's just miraculous and beautiful. Not everybody is like that. I'm definitely not like that. I did appreciate this palette for the fact that I couldn't just screw anything up utilizing these colors. The black was honestly amazing to find out that it was more of a build up to opacity black than it was a straight up in your face black, because while sometimes I do want a straight up in your face black, I also sometimes do not. Black is a hard color to mess with in an eye look, and it's very scary for a lot of people because it's just straight up can F your eye look. And I did have a lot of fun with it. I do think that I came up with quite a few looks and didn't want for anything in particular while utilizing this palette for a week, which is something that I know occurs for me quite often. I want a different color in my brow bone, or I want a different color for transition. I didn't have that with this, which is also why I said in the beginning that I think that this could easily be somebody's one and done. And with that said, I am going to pull a new palette for next week, and I will be right back. All right, so I think the palette that I want to use next week is the Juvia's Place Walhalla 2 palette. This is a palette that I picked up around the holiday season and haven't used it yet. I think it gives me a lot of options. There are a couple of glitters in there. Y'all know I won't be using those glitters, not because I can't or shouldn't, but because I'm terrified. I'm really curious about this color here. I would jump at the chance to own a bunch of multi-chromes from other establishments that I could actually get multi-chromes from versus Cleona. I might actually write them off of my list because it's just so hard to get shadows from them, which is super discouraging. But with that said, that's all I have for you guys. I hope that you'll come back, watch me review the Juvia's Place Walhalla palette next week. Have you guys used the Dominique Cosmetics Berries and Cream palette? I would be interested to know what your thoughts are on that. Maybe even interested to know what your thoughts are on the Juvia's Place palette, since I haven't even touched it yet. I have seen some really beautiful eye looks come out of this palette though, so I'm excited to play with it. I hope that you'll consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already. I hope that you'll also consider giving it a big thumbs up. If there's more that you want to see from me, I do have my playlist down in my description box, but also YouTube should be suggesting one to you here very shortly. And yeah, guys, that's all I got for you. So thank you all so much for coming today. I hope that you are all well. I hope 2021 is treating you kindly so far. I hope that you all are loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye.